In today's episode, we're discussing mindset as a must-have for law firm growth with Drew Amoroso. Welcome to the Law Firm Launch Podcast.
Drew Amoroso. I am so happy to have you on my podcast. I was like, whenever we've been talking about launching this podcast for like a year, and you just never prioritize like your own internal stuff when you've got clients, right? You're always working on the client stuff. And when we finally got to this point, it was really like in the middle of like the pandemic and all the stay-home orders, where I was like, you know what? We wanted to start the Law Firm Launch podcast, specifically, for lawyers that are looking to launch, like starting their firm or wanting to launch from where they're at now in their firm and grow. And like right now, people are so confused and down and uncertain about what's going on. I'm like, you know what? We just need to like get it up off the ground, right? Let's get it started. And really, we just wanted to have informal, real, raw, transparent conversations with people that have been in this industry, that have seen a lot, and that have a lot of value to add to this discussion. So I'm just so grateful to have you because you've been in this industry for a long time. And you just had such a really cool and interesting journey through your career. And then I just love you as a person too. So, I love doing things with people that I love working with. So.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come on. I couldn't agree with you more that now is a great time to do projects like this, right? To cross off some of these things that we've been wanting to do for a while. And as I'm sure you've been hearing from your clients and other people in your network, these kinds of things where you're sharing stories and advice and information from people is really some of the most beneficial content that I think you can offer to the people in your network. So I think the idea for this podcast is awesome. I'm sure a lot of people are benefiting from it, and I'm excited to be on it. So thanks for having me.
Cool. Awesome. Why don't we kick things off by just for, all of our followers and people that are listening, like give us the, 2 minutes of your professional journey and sort of where you've come from and where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career as a lawyer. I graduated from UC Davis in 2010. And I started at a big firm called Reed Smith. So Reed Smith is an international firm, and I was working out of their San Francisco office, and I was doing financial services litigation, so primarily class action defense work with financial institutions. And I did that for many years, loved my experience at Reed Smith, wonderful people there. But eventually I left the firm and started my own law firm called Move Legal. And at Move Legal, we represented fitness, health and wellness, and supplement and food companies that were in the fitness space. So basically like startup law for emerging fitness brands. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then loved those clients and really did enjoy that work. But I realized that as I look back at my career, the most rewarding times for me were times when I was training and coaching other lawyers and professionals in my network on how to improve their workday. So it sort of started informally, but then as I look back, I thought, you know what, this is really something that I love doing. I think it's really important work. And so I decided to start again, and I launched a tech startup called DueCourse. And so DueCourse is a mobile app that helps lawyers and professionals strengthen what we call their workday mindset and show up at their best at work. And I can explain what workday mindset is in a second, but I also coach and train entrepreneurs like law firm owners on a one-to-one basis on how to sort of free themselves from the workday obstacles and some of the mindset barriers that prevent them from building and growing the kind of business that they want. So that's what I'm up to today.
That's awesome. Well, whenever I was trying to think through I like doing the series concept, in our podcast so we can, organize by topic, like what's really going to be meaningful for law firm owners. And I just kept coming up in my head, like the must-haves for law firm growth. Like, what are the things that you have to have in order to grow your law firm from where it is today? And I know, like, when I say growth, growth means so many different things, right? I mean, it could be money, it could be geography expansion, it could be lawyers, it could be profit, right? It could be growth in our maturity as an organization. And that means so many things. And as I was like, just kind of going through that, like, what, if I were going to give my best advice to lawyers on what are the things that they have to do in order to grow, like mindset, right? Mindset is at the tip top and it's at the very beginning because it's the thing that will help you go like this or the thing that will help you go like this, right?
Yes.
So I thought it was perfect timing when you and I were chit-chatting and I was like, oh my gosh, like this would be such a great launching off point. So this is the very first episode in this series of must-haves for law firm growth because I felt like mindset was just so important at the get-go because if you don't get it right at the get-go, you're going to have to figure it out somewhere along the way, right?
Yeah.
You can't, obviously, you can.
Yeah.
So why don't we like jump in and tell me about, like, I don't know, have your sort of professional and personal journey that really led to you, I guess, a greater understanding of the importance around mindset.
Yeah.
Like, tell us more intimately about your journey.
Yeah. So I first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. Mindset is really the foundational aspect to any sort of personal or professional growth that you want to see. The way that you're thinking leads to the way that you act, right? And when we start to unpack how you're thinking, we realize that there are all sorts of things that are getting in our way each and every day that we didn't even realize were barriers for us that are preventing us from growing as a person, from growing our business, from taking advantage of opportunities, from approaching challenges in a certain way. So couldn't agree with you more. And I would love to share with your audience too a little bit more around exactly what Workday Mindset is and how I think you can start to use it. But in terms of my journey, when I was at Reed Smith, I had this very specific moment that I remember where I went on vacation with my family. It's probably 2015, and we went to the beach, and it's the first time I'd ever turned off my phone. So I turned off my phone for 2 days in a row, no work email, didn't even look at it for 2 days straight. And it was one of the most transformational moments for me because I was reading books and basically just like clearing out the noise and saying like, what is it that I really enjoy? How can I help myself each day show up at my best? And I got really inspired around this idea of personal growth and how you're thinking each day and how that influences the way that you act. And so from there, I started to really research it and take every kind of course you could think of. I read every single book out there. And that really got me excited about helping people to experience the same thing. And eventually what I landed on is what we call your Workday mindset. So Workday mindset is basically, in a nutshell, just the set of beliefs and the attitudes that you use to shape your thought processes and respond to situations at work, right? So if you think about it, for a business owner, for anyone, any professional, anyone who's at work, every workday is comprised of just these dozens of mini little situations that we have to think through in order to get through the day, right? So just think about all of the different inputs you have to process as a business owner in a given workday, right? You have to process the actions of your colleagues, your clients, the people you work with. You have to manage your own emotions and thoughts, your own energy levels. As a business owner, you have to manage thoughts that you're having around perfectionism, fear, self-doubt, your own abilities. If you're lacking structure in your day, feeling overwhelmed, right? Managing all the little things that might be getting in the way of you tackling your biggest projects, second guessing yourself on major decisions, right? And so you have these kinds of situations and other thoughts that you have to think through and process to determine how you are going to respond each and every day, right? And it turns out that the way that you move through a workday, the way that your workday goes, the way you grow your business, whether you're able to take advantage of those opportunities, right, and overcome those challenges, it's all influenced by the way that you think through those situations. So the actions of other people around you, that sort of influences our thoughts, but at the end of the day, it's the way that we think ourselves that helps us decide what actions we take. So seeing that as sort of like the foundation, right, the starting point in our business, if we can teach people how to think differently about those many situations that arise, then those thoughts translate immediately into actions that we can take that make us much more effective at being active participants in how our business grows. So I love doing this because I think there's a saying I'm sure that you've heard before: personal growth precedes professional growth. And I think that is such a true statement. And so sometimes we feel compelled to, learn how only to focus on, business strategy and business concepts and business techniques. But I feel very strongly that the precursor to that is working on ourselves as well every single day in the way that we would, take care of our bodies or brush our teeth or anything like that. We have to be intentional about having a day-to-day practice that focuses on mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so much like packed into what you just said, but like something that just like stood out to me was, when you're going through your day and your focus is on like everybody else and everything else, and like your brain space is like being consumed by the processing of those situations, instead of like taking a step back, resetting and thinking, okay, how can I think about this different and process this differently to save myself that time, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Over processing and overthinking, and it starts with self, right? And so many times, though, it's in our human nature to want to start with everybody else, or start with circumstances.
Right.
And so I love that as like a key point, is like it starts here, right? It starts with self.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful.
Yeah, we have this saying: work on yourself before your work day. And the idea is, right, you can't show up at your best for everyone around you. You can't make decisions from a place of clarity, and you can't really move through your day at your best unless you are doing the things that you need to show up at your best, right? So you have to take care of yourself first. And sometimes, especially as lawyers and service providers, we think, well, we wake up, a lot of us wake up, and the first thing we do is look at, our email and who needs something from me, right? Yeah. Who needs something from me right now? And let me make sure I get it to them as fast as possible. But part of I think what we, a way for us to shift away from that is say, okay, I'm going to be able to address all of those situations at a much higher capacity and with much more clarity if I can start by working on myself first. So what is it that I need when I get up? What is it that I need when I show up at work in order to really position myself to show up at my best for everyone around me? It's just not, it's counter to what we've been taught. And it's very counter to the legal industry culture.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely fair. Yeah.
Right? So it's just something, I think the billable hour has really made us focus in on like, how can we pack in every moment to work on working? And so I don't think culturally it's something that we that has really made it into the legal profession. But I think it's absolutely necessary for business owners to embrace that concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, I love that you specifically tied it to the industry too, because it's like this like hamster wheel, work harder, not smarter thing, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah. Totally.
What you're suggesting is like there's a way for us to work smarter, but it starts here. So thinking about, I mean, you've worked with a lot of lawyers, a lot of firm owners, over your career. Like if you were gonna think through like the mindset of the lawyers that are really successful versus the mindset maybe of those that aren't, like compare and contrast those to us to give, our followers some ideas.
Sure. So as a lawyer who has started several businesses now, I think there's a couple of things that I see if we're talking about, some key differences between those who have found success in running their own businesses versus those who haven't. I think the first one would be just letting go of perfectionism, which is a hard thing to do, right? We are, as lawyers, we're trained to really be down in the details, right? And we need and want things to go perfectly, but that doesn't really translate well to the idea of growing a business, right? There's all sorts of things that will not go the way that you want, and we have to be okay with them. And so the corollary to that is you can't grow a business when you're trying for it to be perfect, right? Because it's just going to slow your growth. You're not going to make the mistakes that you need to make. You're not going to learn the lessons that you need to learn really quickly in order to achieve growth. So if you stay in this perfectionist mindset that we are taught to have as lawyers, you're going to slow down your business growth drastically. I think we also have to think about risk differently, right? The lawyers that I see that really do well in business, they transcend the idea of risk that we're taught as lawyers, right? So we're professional risk spotters as lawyers, but again, you can't really think that way as an entrepreneur, right? You have to appreciate risk in a different way. I also think those business owners who are open to innovation and some new ideas really succeed. As lawyers, we rely on precedent, right? So when you're building a brief, what do? You look backwards. Like, what has everyone for the past 100 years said about this particular issue? And again, that's how the legal system works, but that's not a good mindset for someone who wants to build a business. We have to be looking forward. And so just because other firms in the past have built their business a certain way, or, taking care of everything in-house, or not use technology or what have you, that doesn't mean that that's the way it should be done. So we have to be really innovative in that way. So those are just three that kind of are top of mind for me. And it is challenging to unwind those, but if you can figure out how to do that and not run your business like a lawyer, but run it like an entrepreneur, I think that really unlocks a lot of opportunity for people.
That was so insightful, because I hadn't really heard it articulated that way. Like, we're wired as lawyers and trained as lawyers to build precedent based on the past. And then as a business owner, we have to be looking to the future. Mm-hmm. That's such a key. I just hadn't thought about it that way, right? I always talk about, within the context of leadership, how litigators are literally the worst leaders, because everything that they're taught to do as a litigator is the thing that makes you a terrible leader, be a bulldog, and try to call out, So it's just interesting, because I just hadn't heard it put that way before. We build precedent based on the past, and now we're a business owner who we really have to be thinking about the future. So it is counterintuitive to maybe the way that you've built your career for however long. So
precedent.
It's fair that could be a challenge.
Yeah, precedent and innovation they're not necessarily in conflict, but they're different concepts. And so the definition of innovation is doing something in a new and different way, right? That's the essence of it. And so if we're constantly looking at how other people did it, right, then if we're trying to do something, we think, well, how has everyone else done it before, right? That's the first place that we go. It's a natural place to go. But if you really want to be progressive, I think that part of the equation is noticing when you're doing that and letting go of some of that and looking for some different alternatives.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you were going to leave our listeners with two pieces of advice, right? If there were two things, or three, whatever makes sense to you, that they could really take away, right? As takeaways on how they can approach their workday differently, approach their mind differently, what would you share? What would be your Drew's words of wisdom?
So I think we've covered this first one a little bit before already, but I really do believe that your personal growth precedes your professional growth. My businesses took off as soon as and it started to all click for me as soon as I realized that my business would only grow as far as I had grown as a person, right? Mm. So if I'm experiencing, limiting beliefs, if I'm, walking around all day with a certain type of mindset, everything around me is going to be hovering at that level forever, right? I'm never going to be able to break barriers. I'm never going to be able to grow my business unless I personally, as a leader, am able to navigate through my day differently, right? So that's the first thing I would say is personal growth precedes professional growth, and we have to prioritize it and have to make time for it. The second thing I would say is to really ask yourself the question, what are the things that help me show up at my best every day, right? We end up edging a lot of these things out of the equation in the name of being too busy, taking care of other people first, maybe not thinking we deserve it, right? Or there's not enough time. But the truth is, everybody around us, they not only want us to show up at our best, they need us to show up at our best, right? So if you're thinking clients, are wanting you to be, overworked, or, not having enough sleep, or not eating well, or being hydrated, or whatever, right? They want you to show up at your best each and every day too. And so it benefits everyone in your professional ecosystem when you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. It's a ripple effect. So I think if we're talking about from a mindset perspective, I think those two things are probably the the things I would leave your audience with. And I would also say we are in a culture where those things are not necessarily prioritized. And so just be aware of taking your cues from people around you who may not be doing that. Just because everyone around you isn't doing it doesn't mean you can't do it, right? Or that you can't lead with that type of a practice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like I've gotten so much out of this conversation. Even in like 20 minutes, I'm like, I'm the person in church that's always saying like, yeah, amen. Like I'm the vocalizer. Like this whole time, I'm like, yes, that's so good. Like even for myself and, being a business owner, like I mean, it's cultural very much, like American culture, but also just corporate American culture to not care about yourself first, right? And to keep like trudging along and it's like actually my very first job was in development. My very first job was in professional development. My first corporate job.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
It was with a company that would like value leadership development so much, and they poured a lot of resources into people continually educating themselves. And so for 6 years, I was beating that drum of how important it is to be educating yourself. And now here I'm sitting here in the business owner seat, like that's at the bottom of the list, right? Working on myself, developing myself. So I'm encouraged today, and like my commitment, I think, even to myself is renewed just by this conversation. So
awesome.
I'm so grateful for you, for your time, for your wisdom, for what you shared with us, and for our friendship. So thank you again so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I think this is a really important thing for people to start to hear, like the messages, like the ones that you're promoting. It not only is good for your business, it's just good for you, for all of us individually, right? It trickles into our relationships and our personal life as well. So I applaud you for doing that. The one last thing I want to say is I have one thing that might be helpful for your listeners. I have a podcast called the Workday Mindset Podcast, where we talk about a lot of these concepts, and they're short episodes, like 6 to 8 minutes long. So that may be another resource that I just wanted to offer up to your audience in case they're interested in learning more about how to make that type of progress incrementally. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the chance to have this conversation with you. This was fun.
Awesome. Cool. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Let's do it.
Okay. Talk soon.
Right. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to hit subscribe or go to legalbackoffice.com for more info.